Today's class in particular is something I want you to be very aware of that you are able to do. This is for hips. Now, if you've had hip surgery or hip replacement, I want to make sure you get permission from your doctor to do these things. Everything I'm going to offer you today is safe unless your doctor told you it's not safe to do this. And it also depends on what kind of hip surgery you had and where you are in your recovery. So I really want you to be aware of that as we get started. Too much hip stretching is actually a cause of a lot of hip pain. So I'm not going to do a lot of hip stretching in this class. We're going to be doing some hip strengthening and some range of motion. Range of motion is different than stretching. We are improving your flexibility, but we're not doing it through the traditional stretch, pull, pull. Imagine a rubber band. You keep pulling that rubber band, eventually the rubber band is going to lose its elasticity. That's what happens when we overstretch a muscle. On the other hand, if we contract and strengthen and then release, what we're doing is we're allowing the chronic tension to dissipate and our body to go back to what it should be in its natural range of motion. All of us have different ranges of motion depending on the shape of our hips, depending on our age, depending on our weight, and also if we are male or female. These are all the important things to keep in mind as you're doing this class. We are going to use a chair today, so I would love for you to have your chair. If you need to pause this, go ahead and pause and go grab the chair. And then we will be on the ground. We won't be doing a huge amount standing up at all today. So it's going to be chair, on the side, and on your back today. So let's go ahead and get started. I'll meet you on the mat. All right, so let's start with a breathing practice to activate our lower body, to become aware of our lower body. We're going to use a mudra with this breathing practice because mudras can amplify the breath and help with what we want. So this mudra is called the gesture of the base of the spine, Adho Mudra Mudra. You're going to make a fist with both hands, and then you're going to point your thumbs toward each other and then lay this on your lap. Got it? So sit up straight and tall. If you can close your eyes, go ahead. Listen to my guided breath and meditation practice. The Adho Mudra Mudra is a calming and centering gesture. The mudra deepens our connection to your pelvis. As we attune to our center more deeply, we're able to channel its energy outward to nourish our entire being. As the Adho Mudra Mudra deepens our sense of centering, it cultivates an experience of equanimity, enhancing our ability to rest within our center, our deep sea of inner peace, no matter what's happening in your surroundings. This is very important because we store a lot of emotions in our hips. Circle of centering. As you hold the Adho Mudra Mudra, take several natural breaths to attune to all the feelings and the sensations evoked by the gesture. Notice how each exhaling breath is directed inward toward the center of your pelvis, and how each inhaling breath radiates outward from the core of your being toward your extremities. Take several breaths to attune to this inward and outward flow of breath and energy, allowing you to naturally deepen your sense of centering. With your next exhale, attune to the center of your pelvis. And as you inhale, visualize a circle of energy encompassing the area from your solar plexus to your buttocks, including your hips. Take several breaths to experience this circle of energy nourishing your pelvis, your abdomen, and the base of your body, while naturally deepening your sense of centering. Now you could say to yourself, centered in my being, I continue my journey with complete equanimity. Centered in my being, I continue my journey with complete equanimity. Go ahead and open your eyes and just notice if you feel it a little more in touch with this part of your body. Lift one foot at a time, up and down, just to feel the earth, and then place your feet firmly on the earth. Place your hands on your thighs. Begin to move forward and back in your chair in a seated cat-cow, starting to mobilize our hips a little bit in a safe way. Feeling the forward and backward movement and the muscles all surrounding our hips as well as our spine. Come back to center. Now lift up one of your legs. It doesn't matter which leg you lift up. Cup underneath with your hands and just lengthen that leg out and draw it in. Lengthen it out and draw it in, activating our hips and our leg muscles. Third time. And then go ahead and place that leg down. Do the other leg. Just notice any differences between one hip and the other hip. Does one hip move a little more smoothly than the other? Is one hip feeling a little tighter? And then come back down. Now, placing your hands on the outer edges of the legs, I want you to press your legs into the hands and your hands press back. So when we strengthen our legs, we're strengthening the muscles around our hips. So go ahead and press the legs into the legs into the hands and the hands into the legs. The legs into the hands and the hands into the legs. Go ahead and release that and just notice how you feel. Do the same thing with the hands, the backs of the hands inside. Press the legs into the hands into the legs into the hands into the legs, and go ahead and release it. Now the next hip mover, you need to either have a chair without arms, like my chair, or if not, I'm going to show you how to do this standing up. So if you have a chair without arms, you can just turn sideways on the chair and tuck your outer foot back, and that knee is bent, and then this leg is bent forward. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to shift this hip forward, shift this hip back. So your hip has to be off the chair. Now, if you do not have a chair without arms, you could do this like this, standing up. You would have one leg back in a lunge position, shift the hip forward, shift the hip back. Shift the hip forward, shift the hip back. So whichever one you're going to do, if you are standing doing it, go ahead and widen your legs and just come down to the ground like this and shift the hips. If you're seated doing this, go back to the middle of your chair, widen your legs, and just allow your body to shift over and then just move things around a little bit. So facing the other direction, either seated or standing. If you're seated, your inside leg is forward, your outside leg is back, your hip is off the chair, you're holding onto the chair so you can shift the hip forward and back like this. Once again, if you're standing, you would do it like this. You would have the chair here, and my hip would still shift forward and back like this. So again, we're mobilizing our hip. Once again, let's go back to either a seated or standing, forward fold, wide-legged to release the hips. And you can be seated or you can be standing, and you're just shifting around and just letting those hips go. All right, so how are you feeling? If you have a chair, go ahead and move it out of the way, and we're going to come to seated on the ground. So this is a range of motion position. The one thing I like for you to do, and this comes from the gentle somatic yoga tradition, I'd like for you to just allow your legs to be in this butterfly position and allow the knees to go off to the side wherever they are. So maybe they're here, maybe they're all the way on the ground, maybe they're here. And just notice what the distance is. So I tend to have a lot of turnout in my hips, so mine is about a little more than a fist away. But yours might be 12 inches or even 18 inches. It doesn't really matter. Bring your knees toward each other. Place the hands on the outer edge of the knees. Now this is going back to the strengthening activity using a little isometrics. We're going to press our legs out against the hands as the hands gently resist. And we're going to keep doing this as we slightly widen our knees, slightly widen our knees, slightly widen our knees. Keep going until you get to your fullest range of motion, and then release. Just let it go. Now go ahead and bend over and see how far you can bend. So I'm about, I don't know, maybe 12 inches away from my feet. Let's try it again. Do it again. So there's a little bit of resistance from the hands, not a lot where it causes pain, just enough to feel the muscles engage. Bring it out, bring it out, bring it out until it's fully extended, and then release it. Let's go ahead and forward fold again. Oh, see, I've gained about 6 inches. Let's try it the third time. Pressing, 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 pressing until you release, let muscles go, and forward fold again. Ooh, I'm down to within, I think, 4 inches. So this is a way to release chronic held tension and restore range of motion. Go ahead and straighten your legs out. Give your outer edges of your legs and your hips a rub down, maybe around the knees as well and down the legs. And notice how you're feeling. So coming on to your backs, bridge pose is actually really, really good for the hips. It's good for the hips because it's strengthening the hips. So lying down on your back with your knees bent, feet on the ground, hands by the side. First, I want you to just rock your hips forward and back. So when I say rock them forward and back, it would probably not even be able to be seen on me, but you could feel it. When I'm rocking my hips forward, the hips and the rib cage are coming closer together. I'm engaging the core muscles. When I'm rocking them back, I'm engaging the back body muscles. There may be a little lift of the back off the ground, and I'm lengthening my core. So rock them forward and back, forward and back. And then placing hands by your side, go ahead and slowly lift both hips together. You're strengthening all the muscles that surround the hips, which keep your hips safe. And then slowly lowering them down. Do this one more time, lifting up and lowering down. So one of the safest ways to release the tension around the hips is through a gentle somatic movement that I'm going to show you next. So draw the right knee in toward the chest, cup your hands around that kneecap, lengthen the left leg, and just notice how far your thigh is from your belly. And this is based on hip tension, right? So we're going to release this hip tension by strengthening the other leg. So engage the muscles of the other leg. Slowly lift it off the ground, 6 to 8 inches. Keep those muscles engaged as you lower that heel back to the ground. When the heel touches the ground, let everything go. So my foot turns to the side, my leg comes in closer, my muscles have released. We're going to do this 2 more times with 2 other feet position. So now my straight leg, I want you to turn your toes slightly out. Lift it, maybe just a little bit. Feel that muscle engaged. Lower it, still feel that muscle engaged. And then let it go. And notice again how this leg comes in closer. Last time, I want you to turn your toes in, almost as if it's pigeon-toed. Lift from the outer edge of this leg. Lower, still with muscle engagement, the outer edge of this leg. Soften everything and let it go. And wow, I have released this hip safely. Let's go ahead and take a moment to notice the difference between your right and left hips and how they feel. Wow, this hip is so much more comfortable and lower to the ground. Draw the other leg up. Cup your hands under the kneecap. Notice how far away this thigh is from your chest. Engage the muscles of the other leg. Lift. Keep it engaged. Lower. Engage, engage the whole time till that heel touches the ground. Soften. Let everything go. 2 more times with different feet position. This time your toes turned out. Engage the muscles. Keep the engagement the whole way down. Soften, let it go. And the 3rd time, your toes are turned in. You're using the muscles on the outer edge of your leg. Lift it. Lower it, not very much. We're only going no more than 12 inches. Let it go. Notice how much closer this other thigh came to your belly because we have released tension in the hips. Go ahead and lengthen that leg out and just notice how your hips are feeling. Have they released some? Scan the body. Breathe deeply back into the pelvis. As I set up for our Savasana, you can go ahead and stay in this laying down position. You might want to bend your knees or cover yourself with a blanket, or maybe you want to sit up in a seated meditation. Whatever feels comfortable to you. How are you feeling? Okay. So I will signal the beginning of Savasana with my bowl. I'll do a reading, give you a little time to rest, and signal the end of Savasana again with my bowl. This reading comes from Donna Falds, who's one of my favorite yoga poets. And interestingly enough, our hips are said to be the storehouse of unprocessed emotions. We just stuff things in there and then we don't deal with them. And so I like this reading because I think it helps you understand about that yoga doesn't always release suffering, but yoga teaches us to face what we're facing. The fruits of practice. Despite fervent pleas for ease and safety, there are many days when reality doesn't quite line up with what I choose. Breakdown. Letting go, surrendering, even the illusion of control. Breathing into the unknown. Sometimes that's what life holds. Practice hasn't brought an end to pain. I still increase my suffering like a fish caught on a line. My struggles only draw the hook in deeper. But being in reality is its own reward. It's the perfect paradox. The courage to stand and breathe when everything in me wants to flee is as great a gift as the freedom to seek retreat. No, practice hasn't brought an end to pain, but it has honed my willingness to experience the moment. And sometimes see perfection unfolding in ways I wasn't big enough to plan, much less predict. Practice isn't about achieving a goal. It's not a means to pole vaulting over suffering. Practice is my way of looking life in the face and saying yes to all of its disparate gifts. Practice keeps me awake when I would sleep and reminds me it's the journey unfolding in the very moment. It's the journey that reveals the truth and not the destination. So very gently move what needs to be moved. Tenderly, kindly, pay attention to how your hips are feeling. Making your way to a seated pose. Go ahead and gather anything that was helpful in this practice and bring your hands to your heart. Acknowledging each other on our own healing journey, and when we practice together, a collective healing journey.